Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. How are you? Welcome to this Thursday, February the 12th, 2026, the day that the PFD died. We're going to talk about that here this morning. We've got a lot of stuff. It's a full show today. Joining us here in hour one, he has been eating those virtual donuts for, like 30 minutes. State Senator Robb Myers is hanging out in the green room, getting ready to jump on board with us here and talk with us about the state of the legislature and the session. And we're going to go into some other topics, I think, including some I know, deferred maintenance. I'm just asking for it this morning. Just asking for it. Anyway, we're going to talk with Senator Robb Myers here in hour one, and we'll get his full take on everything that's happening and where things are going and where he sees things in the next whatever it is, 12 weeks, 13 weeks. Then in hour two, we're going to pick it up with our friend Ben Carpenter, former representative and now the host of the show called Oversight Live, which if you haven't been following Ben on Oversight Live, he comes on the air on YouTube every night about 7 p.m. and takes an hour or so to dissect some of the news of the day and some of the things that have been going on, and gives us a little perspective from his point of view as a former legislator and part of that whole process. So he'll be joining us today to, again, pick through some of the bones of some of the things that we've been talking about this morning. I also want to touch on today, just for a moment, and we could touch on this with Rob, but there is a piece of legislation that is up for testimony today. Normally, we would reserve this for Friday, but because it's up for testimony today, I wanted to bring it to your attention. Senate Bill 203, which is a bill that is entitled the Prohibited Weapons and Firearms Convert Device. That's the short title of it. Which it seems to be. It seems to be a bill that, quite honestly, fixes a problem that's not there. And we'll talk about that here in just a second with Rob when we bring him on. But this is, I think you could officially call this in shorthand the Glock switch bill, which, by the way, is already illegal. I'm just pointing that out. This is already illegal on many levels, and in fact, even under state, I know you could argue that it's under federal law, it's illegal, but even under state law, the possession of a firearm that can produce more than one bullet with a single pull of the trigger is already illegal. And why we needed to virtue signal to go into this and to waste time on this is kind of shocking to me. But hey, what do I know? So anyway, but before we get any deeper into any of this, let's just pull the trigger on it. See what I did there, and get with it with State Senator Robb Myers. He joins us this morning live from Juneau. Hello, my friend. How are you?
All right, Michael. You feeling punny this morning?
I'm feeling pretty punny. That was 2/3 of a pun. It was PU. It was a real stinker. Anyway. we're going to chat this morning about just a variety of things, and maybe we should just go ahead and crack off with that because that's the first thing. And I know that it's up for testimony today, 3:30 in Senate State Affairs. It's going to be a teleconference. And so maybe we can touch base on this before we get into some of the deeper and heavier things, Rob. Any have you been following this at all? You got any kind of comments on this, or has there been any discussion in the hallowed hills of Juneau about this?
Well, so this is the first hearing for the bill. So it was one of the pre-files this year, so it's a brand new bill this year. So it's just coming up, since the session started. So first hearing for the bill. Just kind of figured that you and some other folks that are big in the 2A community would be interested in it. That's why I alerted you to it last week. So if you go find our Alaska State Senate Republican Caucus Facebook page, we made a post about it a couple of days ago. That's got the phone number to call in and the email address. If you can't call in, send an email into the committee to let them know how you feel about it. So, I'll keep my eye on it. It's going through, let's see, it looks like State Affairs and Judiciary, theoretically. So I'm not on either of those committees, so I won't see it personally until it gets to the floor. We've got, let's see, what is it? Senator Tilton is on both State Affairs and Judiciary. She's the minority member there. So I know she's been a big 2A supporter for a very long time. So I'm not too concerned about our representation there. But, hey, like I said, we're in the minority, so we get 1 seat out of 5 on each of those committees.
It's pretty tough. I mean, look, this whole thing, this bill is a 1-page bill, right? So all it does, and quickly, I want to go through this quickly, but this goes through Alaska State Code 11.61.200. And this is all about, prohibited firearms, what it means, explosives, incendiary, noxious gases, mines, rockets, emergency flares, bombs, grenades. And the current law says under Section C, what is a prohibited device? A prohibited weapon is a firearm that's capable of shooting more than one shot automatically without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger. Boom. That's already in law. And they want to add to that in the end a new section that says device designed, made, or adapted to convert a handgun into a firearm that is capable of shooting more than one shot automatically without manually reloading by a single function of the trigger. It's the same language, except they added device designed, made, or adapted to convert a handgun. I mean, what it's already covered. Firearm that is capable of shooting more than one shot automatic. Again, this is a solution looking for a problem in my opinion. I don't even know, other than this is virtue signaling and trying to show that they are in camaraderie with Chicago or someplace else that's put forward some kind of Glock switch ban on this as well.
Yeah, I don't know what the purpose is. I suppose we'll find out when the bill gets presented today. Why they're bringing it forward. So send in your emails. I've already pulled down about 50 emails overnight in my own personal inbox on it, and so there's. Yeah. I'm sure there's some folks that are going to get interested in this one. So
yeah,
we'll see anyway, how
I just wanted to highlight it and make mention of it because again, this is the first time that we're hearing about it, and I didn't want to have to wait till Firearms Friday. So sorry, I just wanted to get that out there.
It's all good.
Okay. So there are so many things that we could talk about, Rob. I know we're going to get into deferred maintenance. Maybe we should push that to the end of the hour so I don't lose my mind between now and then, because we've got this whole Mount Edgecombe thing that's coming to a head. We had the Antioch school that fell down. We got some things to talk about. But maybe we should talk first and foremost about what happened yesterday in the House Finance Committee, where yesterday in the House Finance Committee, the Democratic majority in the House Finance Committee submitted a new committee substitute for the operating budget bill. And on a 6-5 vote, six of the majority to 5 of the minority, they voted to put it through. And this bill has zeroed out the PFD. The entire draw gets deposited directly into the general fund. And Andy Josephson just assures us that this is just part of the process. Nothing to see here, move along. But there is no PF. This is it. This is, again, I've been saying it. They said the quiet part out loud. We played the audio from Kathy Giesel last week talking about all the projects and things that they could use to backfill the, if they had the PFD, if they just took that $685 million, they could spend it on SNAP and food stamps and Medicare. And Von Imhoff talked about, treatment centers and tourism destinations and all these things that we could spend it on. And now here it is. Here it is. They've taken away the full PFD, and they'll get us something in it. But again, this is just a self-fulfilling prophecy, because this is what I've been saying for the last 2 years, that this is that last year was really the last year of the PFD. What's your take on this, Rob?
So, putting in a committee substitute and altering the PFD and everything else, that is sort of normal for the process. But here is the difference. Normally what happens is the House will go through and they'll do their budget subcommittee process, which starts shortly after session starts. And that each department gets broken out into its own subcommittee. And so that ends up lasting until mid-March, give or take a little bit. And then each of those subcommittees bring back a report to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee takes those reports and creates the first committee substitute for the new budget. And that's going to have not only each of the department changes, but then some, possibly some changes in, fund source capitalization, how much debt we're paying down, things like that, moving money around between accounts, and then changes to the PFD to make, whatever they want to happen. So the weird part here is that they did a committee substitute first thing before the subcommittee process has gone through yet. The subcommittees barely got started. I think the House subcommittee started last week. And the only thing they changed was the PFD. That's the strange part. Usually it all gets changed all at once. And so, there's that on a symbolic level. The other thing that is striking to me is effectively this is the paperwork version of saying the quiet part out loud, because we have effectively acted this way for a long time, where we've said, oh, we're going to put whatever we want in the budget first, and then the PFD fits in afterwards. And, that's how we've kept knocking the PFD down is, oh, we found something more important than the PFD, So, well, you're always going to have something that is important. That's the nature of government, is the wants and the needs. There is no there is no limit to that. When you've got a pot of money and folks coming to government, there is always a need. That's, you go back to Marx, with the to each according to his need. Well, there's no limit to the need, and that's part of the reason that system falls apart.
Right.
And that is the case in any kind of government. It doesn't have to be a Marxist government. That's just what government is there is always somebody asking for more. And so if you say, oh, well, this is more important, well, then there's always going to be something to make it fall apart. So I expect that mid to late March or so, they will introduce another committee substitute with their changes to the budget, and it will include something in the PFD, but exactly how much, I don't know. Way too early to tell. It could be $200 at this point.
Yeah, not to correct you, but do you really think they will include any? I mean, to come out with a substitute that only basically defunds the entire PFD and puts it in the general fund, do you really think they'll come back out with anything? Because we know what the habit here is. The habit is to spend every available dollar, and if the dollar is available and in the general fund, then it could be gone by the time you get to March. It could already be encumbered. And like you said, I mean, I maybe a $200, maybe a $300, but I'm at this point that they have done this, it's very doubtful. And like you said, that the subcommittee, the subcommittee process has just been ignored, and they just slapped this down there because they knew they could push it through with their majority. And again, the irony of the fact that you had the rep from District 38 speaking on the floor about how much they need the PFD for the villagers that got hit by the typhoon and how important that is for them and everything else. And yet she voted to put a substitute in that zeroed that out. I mean, there's just so much disconnect here. I don't even know what to say. But again, it's the quiet part out loud, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is the paperwork part, of us finally, effectively doing the paperwork and legislative process version of what everybody's mindset has already been for 8 years now, maybe longer. In a lot of people's mind, the PFD is whatever's left over. And, as you and I have talked about a couple of times already, if the PFD is whatever is left over, eventually there will be nothing left over. And that's the route that we're headed. Now, as I've heard quite a few people say around here, and I think in the media a little bit too, the PFD will probably still be there this year because it's an election year, and it's less of a financial thing and more of a psychological thing of, do you want to cross that Rubicon in an election year? We've crossed so many other Rubicons. We went from first cutting the PFD at all under Walker, and then, breaking through some of these other barriers, going down to the 75-25 and then down to the, we broke that one last year. We went down to, the $1,000, which was the smallest in history after accounting for inflation. And you keep breaking each of these psychological barriers. And this is the kind of the final that $1,000 mark. Going under that is another psychological barrier, but it's still likely going to happen this year. And then the final psychological barrier, of course, is not having a PFD at all, which are people around here going to want to do that during an election year? Probably not. Excuse me. So that's probably going to happen next year.
It's frustrating to watch, but again, as we've said on this program, not unexpected at this point. All right, Robb Myers is our guest. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. We will return. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Robb Myers is our guest. Ben Carpenter in hour 2. We'll be back right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
In the break, Robb Myers is our guest. Oh, I forgot to put that up there. Oh, there we go. We got the timer.
Got to see my life counting down in front of my eyes.
Exactly. You got to know exactly when the guillotine is going to drop there. Kevin makes an interesting point, from a political kind of strategery standpoint. He said they do not want to get into the same situation they were in last year, where they could not muster the votes to reduce the PFD until a political move on the floor when a couple of the minority were gone, which allowed a committee substitute with a $1,400 PFD. And yeah, that I could see that they're trying to be preemptive in that, but in doing so, again, they've revealed their hand. They've revealed the hand to say it's all what we need. It's all what we want. And that's just kind of mind blowing. It really is, to think that they're just now. I know I've predicted it, but at the same time, to see them actually do it is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, like I said, it's at this point, it's less a financial decision and more of a psychological one. They're freaking out. Okay, well, we can't pay the PFD because we don't have the money because we want to spend it on government. But at the same time, we know that we face these kind of psychological milestones in the voters' minds as the number keeps going down. So yeah, It's not surprising, but yeah, it is still discouraging to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Lonnie says, Michael, have you seen the chart of state population compared to the state government spending since statehood? I have not. Maybe Rob has, because Rob is he's been following a lot of these things and talking about the state spend, and actually has been researching that. In fact, he's provided us with a lot of details on that here in the past. Rob, have you seen the chart that they're talking about there?
I published one actually in one of my articles. It was the series that I'm on. What was it? The third one was specifically about spending, and so I had a article. I had a chart specifically with spending since statehood, and I adjusted it for inflation and population. So you can see where the operating budget has been, where the capital budget has been, where our what we call fund capitalizations and state. They call it what is it, a statewide operation or something, and really what that means is doing things like paying off debt, paying our retirement service, moving money from one account to another and stuff. How some of that has changed. But yeah, I put that in one of my first ones here, and I can try to find that for you here in a second.
Yeah, I'm looking. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Is it possible to cut spending? Here it is.
There we go.
Is that the one? Alaska real capita per spending?
Yep. You'll see the chart in there.
Yep. I got the tiny version here, but I will drop it in the. I'll drop it there, and then we'll post it up for folks to take a look at here. Let me throw that up there as well.
Find you a larger version.
We'll see how it goes. Here we go. So that's the state. That's the spend that we're talking about, per capita spending, with state funds and between the statewide funds, agency operations, statewide operations, and capital funds. This one doesn't have the. Does it have the population on it? It doesn't.
That has already been adjusted for inflation and population.
Okay, already adjusted.
Yeah. So, I mean, the interesting thing to me when I had my staff put this together a couple of months ago is, that blue bar at the bottom is the agency operations, basically what it takes to run state government day to day. And the amazing part to me is, we've talked about how much, we're spending more than we take in and all this sort of thing. And you look at that and we're basically at the same level on our agency operations since the late 70s. It's not something recent. It's not taking the permanent fund or anything that has grown our government. We've been at that level since the oil money started flowing effectively.
Here we go. Hold on. Here we go.
Today's recipe is the important Alaskan news of the day with a dash of sardonic smile, a pinch of eye twinkle, not that you can see that on the radio, and a touch of acidity. It goes down easier like that. Don't question our recipes. The Michael Duke Show.
All right. Continuing now, Robb Myers is our guest. We were just talking in the break about state spending. Somebody asked in the chat room about we'd seen the chart on state population compared to the state and the government spending since statehood. And of course, we're seeing an exodus right now. And I think we're just going to continue to see it. And the worst part is, of course, is the exodus is not equal across the board, Rob. It is primarily at this point, it is middle income, average working age families that are leaving. We actually had a net inflow of retirees and older, people who are on the upper end of the income scale and not, I guess, contributing, I guess you would say, to the workforce. But we're seeing this, and I think now that they're talking about, eliminating the PFD completely, that is going to be, that's going to be even worse, don't you think?
No, I agree. Because the PFD is one of the things that helps us cope with the higher, the higher cost of living up here, of course. I think there's a few things at play here. One is another graph I had in my very first article is the median income up here. The median income up here is still higher than the national average, but the difference is that the national median income has been growing significantly. The chart I had came from the U.S. Department of Labor, and the median income since the mid 80s across the country has risen something like 40% after accounting for inflation. The median income in Alaska in that same time period has gone up something like 5%. So we're still above, but we lost a lot of ground. And I actually ran across an article just last week. If I find it, I'll forward it to you. That was looking at median income in the different states since 1970. So keep in mind, this includes the pipeline boom. But
Right.
we're something, our median our income growth in this state across that time period, we're like fourth or fifth worst in the country. We're basically on the same level as the Rust Belt states since 1970. So that's one significant portion of it. Another thing I think is that I was just talking to somebody about this last night. If you look across the state at our private economy, so much of our private economy is kind of based on these project scenarios. The big ones we're talking about right now are, the Willow Project, the Pika Project. Up in the Fairbanks area, Fort Knox is talking about, they're looking at end of mine life in, I think, 2029. They're trying to find the next phase to push that out again. I was just talking to them a couple of weeks ago, and you see some of these other projects across the state, and all these projects are good things. But when your economy becomes project based, then for a lot of people, they look at it and they go, "Oh, okay, so I can have a great job for the next, say, 3 to 5 years, but is this a place where I can feel comfortable to buy a house and to sit here and raise my kids, for 20 or 30 or 40 years long term?" That's the that's the problem we're running into. And the only thing that's really looking long term in our state right now is government. And that goes back to this same problem that we've been talking about, where the government economy has become the economy, in a lot of people's minds. And that's a scary place to be. And so this is why, a large part of the reason that people are moving out is because they don't see a future. Okay, I can get a good job for the next 3 to 5 years, and then I don't know what's going to happen after that. So maybe the safer thing to do is I move out, and then I come back and work here for 3 to 5 years. And we're hitting a near record high for out-of-state workers in Alaska again.
Yeah, was it 23% or something of all? I mean, it's
Yeah.
a huge number.
Yeah, it is. And, some of that is, we've always had a high percentage there compared to most states. And a lot of that's because of the seasonal nature of some of our stuff. We don't talk about it a whole lot. We think about like the slope workers, but the biggest things that bring in seasonal workers, out-of-state workers, is the fish processing and tourism. And, those are highly seasonal. So to some extent, we're not getting away from that. But, we're also not branching out and expanding our economy internally, which we should be doing with all those oil revenues. They should have been creating an economic and an industrial base, but it's not happening because all of that money has been claimed by state government. And the state says, no, we'll decide what is going to become the economy. We'll decide who is the politically favored people that are going to receive this money. And that, that's hamstringing us. And, when ICER came up here a few weeks ago and did their presentation on the different spending and revenue measures and the effects they have on the economy, one of the things that they emphasized to me, talking to me, was you have to protect the workforce, because, and this is kind of unique to Alaska because of where we are, is if you don't protect the workforce leaves state, and it is so hard to draw them back. Other states, if you don't protect the workforce, well, they might hang around and, if they leave a government job, they might find a private sector job or something like that. They can kind of float around a little bit more. But between our location and our small population and the precarious nature of our economy, when somebody loses a job, most of the time they're going to be looking at leaving, and that is hugely detrimental to our economy, because then that means that now, even if they find another job, now that job's in another state, and that money then circulates down there instead of circulating up here. And so there's just that knock-on effect. And if we're going to ignore the effects on the workforce, and instead pay attention to the effects on the state budget, then we're just going to keep going down that death spiral.
And I think that's again where we're at, and the question keeps coming back, Rob. And we talked about this the other day. I just don't think that there is the political will or the political foresight or maybe the intelligence, I don't know, to stop this in its tracks, to turn this bus around. I feel like we're going to have to plunge off the cliff and crash at the bottom, and then everybody's going to have to try and pick themselves up and put it back together, which is not the way to. I mean, if we did it now, at least we have some resources, we have some funding, we have some time, but I just don't see the political will to make the changes necessary to prevent us from having this happen.
Right. One of the things that I brought up with you last time I was on is there's this disconnect between the short term and the long term. And the short term, the easiest thing to do is effectively try to keep the party going. That is the simplest and most obvious thing for the politicians to do. Is we've got this model. This is the model that gets us into office, that we'll get elected on every year. And we want to keep that going. So, we ran out of money here. Well, let's find another pot of money so we can keep spending money to help our reelections, because that creates a class dependent on, my actions in the legislature to get me down here. And, it's a self-perpetuating cycle. The problem is that all of those decisions are things that are politically advantageous in the short term, but economically disadvantageous in the long term. And so there's that huge disconnect there. And ultimately, we're going to have to make some decisions that are going to cause some pain in the short term, and honestly might get people unelected if we don't get the population on board, but will then give us the prosperity and put us on the right path for 10, 20, 30 years down the road. But I'm not gonna be in office in 20 years. Most other people around here aren't going to be in office in 20 years. Governors are term limited. We don't have time politically to wait around for those results. And we have to have some people that are going to be far-sighted enough to go, all right, I'm not going to see the results, but I don't care. I'm going to do the right thing that is going to make the give us the results we need for our kids and grandkids down the line. And that's difficult. And then you also have to have some people in office or running for office or both that are willing to say, hey guys, this is going to hurt next year. In order to do the right thing, this is going to hurt next year, but keep our eyes on the prize, keep our eyes on the direction that we're going here to make this the place we want to be in 20 years.
Yeah. Instead of pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Senator Stedman. Well, the Senate President listed off of a series of headwinds that we're facing. And I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena. We see them coming. We're going to try to deal with them.
I mean, we see them. We know them. We built it. And we knew it was, I just don't want the public to focus on that. Of course, they don't want the public to focus on that, because then the public would understand. I mean, that's the thing. If you ever sit down with a normie who's not paying attention to state government, and you lay it all out of what's happened since 2005, and you talk about the creep of government, what's going on, the spend, how in the teens we basically drained all of our available dollars and savings down to nothing. That's what led to the taking of the PFD. And now we're seeing that going. And now, of course, as of today, there's no PFD in the budget. If you lay that out for the normal person's like, wow, that really? Yes. They just don't want the public to pay attention to all that. But there is a reckoning coming. Final thoughts, Rob, here for this segment.
Yeah, I think, again, this goes back to, we have kept the cost of our government hidden. We have kept the money that should have been flowing into the private sector to individuals for them to decide how to invest into the economy, to not only grow it, but also diversify it. And we've kept that all from happening. We've short-circuited all of those connections by having the state be the royalty owner in the vast majority of cases. And and the feds, but we've been able to hide the cost of government from people. We've been able to disconnect the way that you grow an economy when you're a resource-based economy. And now we're seeing the fruits of that. This is, as I've been trying to say in my writing project here over the last few weeks, this is not a new thing. This is not something that started 10 years ago with Bill Walker or anything like that. This is something where we sowed the seeds of it back in the 70s, and now we're reaping the consequences.
Reaping that bitter harvest. That's what we're doing right now. All right, we're going to continue. State Senator Robb Myers is with us. Up next, we're going to pluck the Band-Aid off and talk a little bit about deferred maintenance. That should be fun. Look out, Ben. It's going to be, we'll be wound up by the beginning of hour 2. State Senator Robb Myers is our guest. We continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right, we're in the break right now. Again, somebody was asking about the testimony on that bill today. And this is the details. If you want to testify publicly today, is it 1 to 3? I thought it was at 3:30.
I think we got the time wrong on that.
I think it's
State Affairs is 3:30.
Yeah, so it's 3:30. But this is the contact info. If you want to send an email, senate.state.affairs@akleg.gov is the email address if you want to send an email comment. And if you want to call in from anywhere in the state, there's the Anchorage number, there's the Juneau number, and then the 800 number is 844-586-9085. And that's why. So if you want to sound off on the Affairs Committee today, 3:30 p.m. Easiest thing probably just to send an email, though. That way you don't have to wait on hold for hours to testify on this bill. But again, this bill, SB 203, is, again, it's a solution looking for a problem because, again, it's already covered in the state statute. I don't know why they feel like they need to expand and specifically call out, unless, of course, it's the virtue signaling of those folks who want to be in camaraderie with the folks in Chicago or wherever else they're fighting over the Glock switches right now. So anyway, that's the info. We'll leave it up for a minute here on the screen in case you want to write it down and take it. Senate.state.affairs@akleg.gov is the email address. Jeremy Bynum, who thank you, Jeremy, for speaking out against taking the PFD completely out of the budget. He said, if the objective is real sustained economic growth, the focus has to be on capital formation. Consumption does not build long-term productivity. Capital investment does. That means physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, ports, rails, utilities, transmissions, water, sewer lines. These are not optimal expenditures. They are enabling assets. They reduce transaction costs, lower logistics expenses, expand labor mobility, and increase the return on private investment. Yes, I agree. But again, these are things that we should have been doing this whole time. But now to turn around and try and pour tons of money into capital investments to try and, I mean, that's almost, to me, Rob, it's almost too little too late, because they've ignored the private sector so much. A huge dump into the capital project will only have a short-term return in in jobs and money in the economy and things like that. We need to start focusing more on the private side of the economy, right?
Well, and the problem is, I mean, Jeremy's 100% correct. The problem is that the attitude down here in Juneau, and this is not new. This has been around since probably the 80s, give or take, from the folks that I've talked to that have been around a while. The problem is that we figured out a long time ago that we could use our capital budget to buy votes effectively. And that happens in two ways. Number one, we build something, that's nice and flashy, and I can, perform a ribbon cutting back in my district or something like that. Hey, look what I brought to you, so to speak. But then we ignore the maintenance on that because, well, that takes away from the money that I could put into the capital project next year, if I don't maintain. Because maintenance isn't sexy. That doesn't bring me votes. That's not very interesting. I can't do a ribbon cutting on, putting in a new HVAC system at the school or something like that. But I can, do a ribbon cutting at a new school. So that gives us a political incentive to not maintain what we've already built. And then on the other side of it, it's, oh, look at how much money I funneled back to my district. Look at the jobs that I created in construction or some other industry like that for the next couple of summers. And, well, is what I'm building something is actually going to build infrastructure to help the private economy in the long run? Well, no, that's not what matters here. What matters is, did I build something that put people to work so that next election cycle, they'll vote for me again because I brought them a job?
It's frustrating to watch this kind of stuff play out because, again, there's been a lot of us in the wings who have been saying, hey, don't turn, don't turn, avoid these pitfalls. And they just won't do it. And again, we're about to tap into, because what you're talking about is a great lead in to this discussion on deferred maintenance, because I'll be honest with you, I was a little naive.
You started early.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. I was a little naive when I got onto the borough assembly in Fairbanks back in 2009, 2010. And I was a little naive because I thought, oh, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to do all these things. And then I discovered that we were taking monies that should have been maintaining the facilities and the infrastructure and the capital stuff that we already had, and we were deciding to spend it on other things. And that just incensed me. And that's where my loathing for this started. So we'll crack into this here. We'll get started. We're about 3 seconds out. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, we're continuing now with State Senator Robb Myers. I was just saying, Rob, when I first went and started serving on the Borough Assembly in Fairbanks, I was a little naive. I'll admit it. I didn't exactly know how the sausage was made. But one of the things that truly incensed me from the very beginning was the discovery that while we had a bunch of infrastructure and buildings and things that we had built as a government, a local government, what I found was that instead of maintaining those facilities, we were taking dollars that were set aside to, maintain new coats of paint, roofs, new heating, new HVAC, whatever it was, to keep the buildings upkeep and livable, was that instead we were using that and putting those off and spending that money on other projects. Now, the state has made an art of this. What's the total right now? You and I have talked about this, and you always seem to have the number because it keeps changing and moving around, but it's over $8 billion in deferred maintenance. Am I wrong?
So the last time that I got the full list was back in 2022. And so it's been a little while, so I'm sure it's gotten worse. And when I got the list then, it was $10.5 billion. So like I said, that's 4 years ago. that's 4 more years of inflation. That's 4 more years of potential deterioration that we're talking about here. And so, to your point about deferred maintenance, the Mount Edgecombe thing has come up, this year. We saw some articles in the news. What was it, over last summer of some of the schools in the rural villages that are falling apart. And frankly, I mean, the state owns those buildings. The state should be stepping up to do the maintenance on them. But in these villages that they don't have an organized government, they don't have an ability to raise their own money. And so it is the state's responsibility. But we don't do that really for pretty simple reasons. As I was saying a little bit over the break, one, we don't build things and take the maintenance into account, because if you have maintenance, that prevents you, that takes money away from, this is what I could use to build the next project that helps me get reelected on the next election cycle. So that's a significant problem that we run into. The other problem is, ultimately your capital budget should not be about, hey, I'm building the next new flashy project that I can perform a ribbon cutting on. Your capital budget should be about what investments are we making this year and next year that are going to reap economic benefits 10 or 20 years down the road. And we've got this serious disconnect there. Now, you talk about your time on the assembly. Well, the assembly, at least, there's going to be some check on that, because the assembly recognizes, one, they've got to keep their taxpayers happy who are saying, hey, you better spend my tax money wisely. Well, we don't have that issue with the state.
Right.
And two, the assembly has to recognize in the long run, or the mayor, or whomever's, we want to talk about here, has to recognize in the long run, if the borough wants to pull in more tax money, the only way to do that in the long run is creating the ability for economic growth to happen. And at the state level, we don't have that pull, because where does our money come from? Well, it's coming from primarily the permanent fund. And behind that, it's oil money. And then, of course, there's all the federal money. And so we don't want economic growth. So are we going to use our capital budget to create actual long-term sustainable economic growth in the private sector? No, we're going to take our capital budget and we're going to use it to build things and not maintain them, because that helps put some people into a job for a year or two in order to, help with my reelection cycle next time around. And so, when I look at things like the Surface Transportation Improvement Program that the state uses to get road money from the feds, for roads and bridges and the like, and I go, how much of this is actually useful in the long run? I was, the Interior delegation here had a meeting with the Northern Region DOT shortly before we came down for session. And they kind of showed us this pie chart of where things fit in the projects that they're doing. And fully half of the projects that they've got budgeted for the Northern region, which is, most of the state in terms of land area, for the next few years, fit into what they call state of good repair, which basically means we're taking this federal money and making construction projects out of it, because we have not been doing the maintenance that we should have been doing. And we're just waiting until it deteriorates far enough that we can, instead of calling it a maintenance project, now it's a construction project and it's eligible for federal funds. Right. And then you and I and everybody else that's out driving on the roads, we get to pay for it in the meantime, because, with the increased maintenance on our cars and things like that. Right. Because we are trying to maximize these federal dollars so that we can put the most amount of people to work next summer in order to turn around and have them vote for us here in the legislature. So it's a seriously messed up system. And, the incentives are so messed up that, that's what's creating our problem here. We don't want to maintain things because that takes money away from other things that we could be doing that help us get reelected. And we don't want to build things that actually build the economy in the long term. We only want to build things that help us in our reelection in the short term.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. This is why they wait until a school is, they let it languish and they let the maintenance build up on it to the point to where they say, oh, look, it's cheaper to knock this school down and build a new one than it is to fix what's broken. We could have been fixing this the whole time, but we've taken the money that we were going to do for that and we spent it on our other pet projects. And now it's a crisis. I mean, now we look at Antioch and the school has fallen down, we look at Mount Edgecombe and what they're reporting there now. This place has been there since 1947, built with federal monies. We could have been maintaining it the whole time and had a premier facility, but instead we decided to spend it on other things. I mean, in Fairbanks, it's the Nordale School thing all over again, right? Nordale School was there. It was running. It still had bond issues attached to it. And they decided, what we really need to do is knock this school down and build another one across the parking lot because it just makes more sense.
Yeah, and we did the same thing with Denali Elementary too.
Yeah. And it's just, it's insane. This is the thing. It's become a money train where we instead of just keeping and maintaining things, we create a system where it's better for the politicians and for the corporate cronies out there in the construction industries and everything else to just knock the buildings down and start fresh. That's not being good stewards of the money. $10 billion in deferred maintenance. 10 with a B, $10 billion. How would we ever, I mean, that's a ball that you could never get ahead of at this point. I mean, it's insane. We got about 2 minutes, minute and a half, 2 minutes here, Rob. Final thoughts for today as to what we're looking at. What does it all mean? I mean, is it just going to have to hit the bottom of the ravine before we're going to turn it around? What do you say?
Well, I'll go back to this writing project. I'm kind of at a point where I'm at the IDGRA stage politically. And I can't say that, or you'll get an FCC violation, but this is something else that I wrote an article on a few weeks ago. The title of this one was, with all the money that we have, why don't we build anything? And this is the problem: is we have created a system where the incentives are backwards of where they should be. We've created a system where the incentive is to ask government to spend more money. So government responds to that by saying, I will spend more money in order to get reelected. Not I will spend more money to help the economy grow in the long run, but I'm going to spend more money to put people to work next summer, because then those people will turn around and vote for me. These are the problems that we have, and this is what creates that disconnect that you and I've talked about so much between the public economy and the private economy. Until we fix those incentives, we're going to be in this situation. The only way that the situation ends is either a major change in leadership and vision, or we run out of money completely.
Robb Myers, always a breath of fresh air and sunshine. Thanks so much, Rob, for coming on board. We appreciate it. Folks, we're out of time. Hour 2 dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Yeah, Rob. I mean, that's the thing. I'm deathly afraid that what's going to happen here, because again, nobody wants to be the adult in the room. This is the perfect time to step up. I mean, right now is the perfect time to step up. We still have time to crank the wheel over and avoid the iceberg. But instead, we're just like full steam ahead. It's going to be spectacular. But I'm afraid that what's going to happen is we are going to hit that crisis point, the real crisis point, where we can't pull back from it. And then, it'll be us and our children and everybody else in the state that'll have to pick up the pieces.
So the question to ask ourselves is, let's go back to 2008, not that long back. And 2008, we, the stock market tanks. And what was it in the short term? The permanent fund lost, I think it was a third of its value at its worst point. And what happens then? Now that we're already in the middle of an oil price crash right now, and all indications are that oil prices are going to stay low for a while. What happens when the stock market crashes potentially? And now we've lost both of our streams of income, and now we're in trouble. So as we're going into this governor's race, here's what I think people need to be asking is not, will you stand tall and veto things out of the budget left and right, because we know what's going to happen there. The legislature will turn around and override those vetoes. We just had that happen last year. What you need to be asking your governor candidates is, how are you going to change the financial incentives so that the voters have an incentive to ask us to spend money on the right things, not spend more money? How do you change the incentives so that the legislature and the executive branch have an incentive to make long-term economic decisions instead of short-term political decisions.
Right. Just to get you through the next election cycle.
Yep.
Which is where we're at right now, where we've been at, and like we said, I'm starting to suspect that the deferred maintenance problem is in part intentional. Like you said, when they're looking at these northern district projects and they're saying, that it's about not maintaining it to the point of now it needs to be replaced and can count as a new project. So that's more money. So that's more people being employed. Then you have to look at this and start to realize this really is intentional, that they're doing it so that, one, they can take the money that was supposed to be used for maintenance and spend it on something else. And two, they could either create a crisis or create an opportunity for those federal dollars to come in to build a, quote, whole new project. Unquote.
Right. And so oh man, it's too early. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, and so the problem that we're going to run into there is, man, it is too early. There we go. Now I remember. So as those articles were coming out last summer, I was having like reporters email me and say, "Hey, have you seen this? This is a big deal. These schools are falling apart." And I tried emailing him back and saying, "Yeah, I know. This doesn't surprise me. It's not the problem. This is not the disease. This is the symptom. This is the problem all over the state. It's just that, a school with black mold in it is, just kind of the most obvious piece of it. But this is our long-term problem." And unfortunately, from those same reporters, it's been crickets. But
yeah, no. Of course, they don't want it. That narrative is too hard. That narrative is too hard. It's easy just to paraphrase the press release from the, from the majorities to discuss those things. They don't want to dig any deeper into this for people who said, "Yeah, I've been pointing this out for years. Are you paying attention?" But anyway, all right. Well, Robb Myers, thanks, my friend. Thanks for getting up early. I know it's not your favorite thing. Appreciate you being here. And he beat me, folks. He was already waiting for me when I came in this morning. But he said that was just defensive to make sure he didn't oversleep. So it's all good. Thanks, Rob. I really appreciate your work, my friend. Thank you for coming on board.
Yeah. Good luck to Ben dealing with you all wound up.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not as wound up as I thought I was going to be, because I'm almost kind of resigned to the fact that this is just kind of how it is. And you can't, it's the frog and the scorpion. You can't change the scorpion. Why do you do it? Because that's what I do. That's what it is. Yep. All right. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you coming on board this morning and being part of it. We appreciate it.
Catch you later, Michael.
Robb Myers, our guest here on the program. Waiting on Ben Carpenter to hit us here in the green room. We'll be jumping into him here in just a moment. And I'm just going to make sure that he has it right there. Again, don't forget, if you want to go out and testify tomorrow, that's the place to testify right there. That's how you do it. And you can do it by sending an email. This is to this afternoon at 3:30 this afternoon. Senate.state.affairs@akleg.gov. And then you can also, if you want to call in and testify, there's the numbers up on the screen. The best one is the 800 number, 844-586-9085. 844-586-9085. Feel free to sound off today on those problems, or on those bills, on this bill. Okay, I see Ben is joining us in the chat room. He's getting ready to go. We could check his audio, I guess, real quick to see where he's at. Hey, Ben, how you doing? You ready? Oh, I got no audio. Oh, there we go. Now you're good.
Mute myself.
Had to unmute. You're all ready to dive into this thing with both feet?
I think so.
Okay, good. Here we go, my friends. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return right after this.
Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com, where you'll find the audio-only stream, plus links to the podcast and our social media sites like Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, where we simulcast the show every day. And also, of course, live around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. Welcome to the program. Thank you for coming in. It's Thursday. It is a full show today. We just finished up with State Senator Robb Myers, and now we're about to speak with former Representative Ben Carpenter, who's now the host of Oversight Live, and we're going to talk about, well, the big elephant in the room, of course, is what happened yesterday in the House Finance Committee meeting. We're going to talk with Ben about that, and our conversation from earlier this week and late last week about Commonwealth North and the commentary that was placed there. Just a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, so to speak. That was the preview, and then yesterday was the payoff when the House Finance Committee voted to zero out the PFD. And we're going to talk about that with Ben Carpenter, who joins us right now. Let's bring him on and see what he has to say. Good morning, Ben. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. Good to be with you again.
Muted again, I think.
No, I'm unmuted.
Nope, you're not. Oh, you were muted, but it was on my side. See, that's how it works sometimes. Too many buttons, too many whistles. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing very well.
I didn't realize today was hat day. I didn't get the memo. I should have worn a hat today. It's
I was told that I shouldn't wear hats when I'm out in public, but this is a cool hat.
That is a cool hat. I really like it. That's like a man from. Huh?
This is for CSL, by the way.
For CSL, okay, good. Yeah, this is like the man from Snowy River hat. I like it. It's all good. Ben, so I know you were in the chat room when we were talking about this last week, and I was playing the audio from the Commonwealth North forum and the presentation there. And I was just pointing out that they were starting to say the quiet part out loud, and that was Kathy Giessel and former Senator Natasha von Imhoff talking about how that $685 million that we wasted on the PFD, which was kind of the tone of everything there, could have been put to such a better, higher use if it had just been used to backfill the Medicaid and the food stamp problem, or it could have been used to build, drug treatment centers and deal with homelessness and build new tourism facilities and everything else. And I was like, wow, they're just finally saying it out loud. And then yesterday, the House Finance Committee put a substitute out on a party line basis or a majority minority basis that completely zeroed out the PFD. So now they're just not saying the quiet part out loud. They're doing it. Give me your take on what you're seeing right now and your thoughts. I know you went out and listened to that whole Commonwealth North thing. Give me your thoughts on where we're at on this.
Hey, well, maybe for first time, Natasha von Imhoff and I have something in common because I'm not running for elected office and I don't have a filter, I guess.
You don't have a filter. No, you got to give me the evil chuckle after that, I don't have a filter.
No,
yeah.
I still have to be the adult in the room because I don't know anything else. Like it doesn't, I can't be party to the conversation that says, oh, look what you're doing with the PFD. Look what you're doing. Look what you're doing. You're taking it, and then not have a solution of my own.
Right.
Like, I can't be that person. I have to be the honest person in the room. I have to be the adult in the room that says, if you're going to criticize that, then you better have a plan of your own. And this is where Republicans are off the train. They're like, just along for a ride. They don't have their own solution.
Well, that's the thing, Ben. I mean, they have a solution. Their solution is to take the PFD and spend it all. I mean, that really, quite honestly, they're not looking for alternatives because that's their solution.
This is, and I go back to this concept of Commonwealth North and the two gals that are having a conversation there with Senator, sorry, I just drew a blank on his name.
Rauscher?
No.
Kaufman, James Kaufman.
Kaufman, thank you. The token more conservative individual. Those two women demonstrated for me what is wrong with the concept from a conservative point of view, from so-called Republican or conservative politicians. Even Republicans are saying, hey, we've got problems and we've got government solutions. And we're going to continue to have that thinking as long as it's other people's money that is going to be thrown at the problem. And that's exactly what Von Imhoff was all about. She's literally saying, we don't need taxes. We've got permanent fund earnings. Don't tax the rich person. Use the permanent fund earnings. We don't need to tax people. But this is the problem with human nature. We don't treat other people's money the same as we treat our own money. So you're going to have waste, and you're going to have programs that maybe shouldn't be prioritized because it's easier to come to political solutions when other people's money is at stake. If it were tax money, if it were money that we would rather not give up, and we have, like, this is going to hurt, but it's for a good cause. It's something that's really necessary, right? That part of our human nature is absent from the conversations of the legislature because we just look at it as other people's money, and I don't really care. I mean, like, yeah, it might be wasteful, but who really cares? No one's going to complain because it's permanent fund earnings that are getting spent. It's the same conversation that's happening at the federal level. We're not complaining about federal dollars flowing to the state of Alaska, even though a quarter of them are debt. It's debt that our future generations have to pay. We're not complaining about that.
No, because we're on the gravy train, baby. We're as long as we're getting paid, we figured out we can vote ourselves fortune and treasure out of the public treasury. We're okay with it, right?
We've forgotten that 2 years ago Republicans were in control of the House, and the budget then cut the PFD. Like, you're not going to have an option. You don't have options. This is it. This is all you have. You can reduce the PFD, but you're not going to reduce spending. You're not going to focus on where this could. I pointed out $300 million of unfilled vacancies. Some portion of that could have been reduced out of the budget. You could have done that.
Right. Oh yeah,
Republican. But you didn't. You didn't. You cut the dividend instead. Like, right. Don't give me the sob story about what the left is doing in House Finance right now, because you'd be doing the same thing. One way.
And even the discussion, I mean, I congratulated Jeremy Bynum, who was in the chat room, for taking a stance against this. But even then, his stance is really more about protecting the capital budget spend versus the PFD, right? Because now the focus has changed to, now we need to spend, and that's the same thing that Giesel talked about. We've got to spend this capital money. We've got to get the money out there because that's the jobs and that's the economy. It's the same argument.
That's right. And government spending the money is a higher priority than people spending the money. That's the concept that is happening in the legislature. What we're doing here is more important than what you're doing in your house. The $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 that would come from this socialist state that we've created, where we like to say, hey, the resources are our own. It legitimizes the tax and royalty that the state gets to put on natural resources. But then the only way that you can benefit from that is going to be through state services. So you've got this system that creates dependency. What we used to have was a dividend that created independency. Like you've got a path forward for natural resources and the wealth to come directly to human beings.
Right.
Without government.
How many, this is the thing. How many businesses were created, with dividends as the seed money? How many family businesses where they pooled their money together? And you could be doing that today. If you received a full PFD at $3,500, roughly, whatever the PFD is, and you're a family of four and you wanted a little seed money to start up a new business, that's, $10,000, $12,000. That's a pretty good start to be able to do that. But they're not allowing that. And now, in fact, they're not going to allow anything. And the irony of this is that it is the Republicans, in this case, we were talking about the Commonwealth discussion with Von Imhoff and Giesel, the Republicans who are saying, oh, the government, we should be spending this money on other things. We should be, we have so much, we have a much better and higher use for this money than just giving it to you plebes. Essentially was the feel. And like you said, Von Imhoff even admit, she's like, I don't think we have a problem. We don't need taxes. We just need to take that PFD and we could do better with it. Well, your track record sucks, lady. I mean, your track record sucks, right? I mean, and Ben, you've tried to be the adult in the room and look where it got you.
This is why I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid with the Republicans right now. I feel like the Republican Party has left me. Republicans used to be limited government, fiscal responsibility. They weren't no taxes, make somebody else pay for government. Because that in the state of Alaska, we're an anomaly. We're unique. That means more government. That's the system that we're creating is I don't care what happens with government. I want to avoid that conflict. And as long as the permanent fund earnings can provide us a government that solves our problems, then I don't have to pay taxes. And that's a good thing, except that you get big government. You get decisions that are made in the legislature that are without the human nature component that says we ought to care about waste.
Right. No, there's no guardrails. There's no guidelines. There's no give and take. There's no pull. There's no counter pull against the size and scope of government. And why would the average Alaskan care? Because they don't feel it. They're, we may lose a little bit of our PFD and everything else, but as long as I don't have to think about a tax or something else, then fine, do whatever. Let it grow. Let it grow. The problem is that when it grows so large that it shifts the gravity in the state, which is what's happened. Now the entire economic gravity of the state is shifted to that state spending, and everything else just doesn't matter.
Your private economy doesn't matter, other than to service government, right? That's in essence what we're going to continue in the state of Alaska. What we're setting up, and I don't know, putting the finality on it. We're saying as long as there's permanent fund earnings instead of taxes to spend, we're going to do that because we don't want taxes. And then whatever that gets us from government is going to be okay. Like that's acceptable. It's no different than what's happening at the federal level that says, well, I don't want to pay more income tax. I don't want to pay more corporate tax. I don't want to pay more taxes at the federal level. So go ahead and spend more debt. Go ahead and finance your budget that way. And then whatever happens with the federal government is okay because I didn't have to pay more in taxes. And that's how we get the behemoth that we have right now. We for decades, we should have had downward pressure on the growth of federal government because you and I would have to pay more in taxes. 25% of the federal budget, $1 trillion, is financed every year. Take another $1 trillion out of taxes, out of the wealthy people who are like, hey, don't tax me, tax that other guy.
Right.
Like you're absent from the conversation of are there solutions other than government spending? Like how many supervisors does it take to dig a ditch? Right. Well, In the private sector, not as many as in the government sector. So you're going to have, everything just becomes more expensive when the government is involved. That downwards pressure on our state spending and on the growth of government doesn't exist when we don't have control, when we are asking government to do things that we're not willing to pay for.
Ben Carpenter is our guest. He's the host of the new show Oversight Live, which you can find over on YouTube. He broadcasts nightly at 7 p.m. And goes through the news of the day and the happenings in the legislature of the day. You can find him at youtube.com/@OversightLive. And we're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. We'll be back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Tune in Friday for our weekend entertainment and movie streaming review with our guest critic, Willie Waffle. That's actually his real name. Really? That's his real name? Man, his parents must have hated him. The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break with Ben Carpenter. If you haven't gone over and subscribed to Ben's show, if you're watching on TV or whatever else, there's a big QR code in the upper left-hand corner of the screen right now. You can snapshot that with your camera, and it'll take it right over to Ben's page. And you can subscribe right now, and you can get ready for him to do it. So just snap a pic of the QR code or point your camera at it, and it'll give you the link directly, and you can go right over there. You can go right over there to Oversight Live on YouTube and get subscribed right now. So Ben, you give me as you listen to this, because this is how I was when I was watching this Commonwealth North Forum. I was torn because I was surprised yet not surprised. What's your overall take on how that forum went out? And I mean, was that just a peek under the hood? What are your thoughts on that as you listen to that?
Well, I was actually kind of surprised by some of the questions of the moderator. It sounded like he was asking the question from kind of a conservative point of view. I don't think that Commonwealth North is actually known for having a conservative point of view, so I'm skeptical there. But I tell you, I come away from listening to that and I'm thinking, you know what? I've got one mother already. I'm tired of being mothered by other people. Like, the bleeding heart that exists in Senator Giesel and von Imhoff for solving other people's problems with other people's money and government solutions is just, it's anathema to me. Like, nowhere in their conversation does personal responsibility and the consequences of decisions that you've made have anything to do with their priorities. Like,
right. Well, and von Imhoff specifically, she was so hyper-focused on Anchorage and the problems, and she was focusing on Anchorage because her son-in-law got punched in the face by some homeless person on the street, and she was all incensed about that. And so her whole focus was all those things. And again, most of the things that she was talking about are things that the city themselves should be taking care of. Why did they become the state's responsibility to take care of, right? But that's the mothering. That's the part of the problem. They want to take care of everything. It's a problem we have in this state where we've forgotten what is the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves, and that's what they want to. That's what they're looking for.
We are a nanny state, and I say that from the perspective of like the people, not the von Imhoffs, not the Giesels of the world. What I'm saying is, from us, we're like, it's okay. We'll take more government. That's the majority of the population keeps sending people to Juneau to give them more government. Take the PFD, make the rich pay. Give us more government. This is the underlying current that exists in the Democrat Party, in the Republican Party, in many nonpartisans. Just
right.
Go get the government to do more for us.
I've been saying it for years, man. This is not a Democrat or a Republican problem. This is a politician problem. And in part, it's also an electorate problem because they're just not paying attention.
Yeah.
The average Alaskan is not paying attention. And that's been happening since the 80s, because all of a sudden we're divorced from, I mean, government's free, right? Government's free. We don't have to worry about it. So just let it grow. If it needs to grow, if it wants to grow, great. If we get a few shekels out of it because our business does business with the government, then great. I mean, we just, whatever, it's fine.
Government should not be alleviating the consequences of our decisions. Government, and this is where Jeremy Bynum and I agree, government should be doing the things that we can't do by ourselves. For example, we're dependent on electricity in this state. We're dependent on natural resources for heat in this state. The government should be playing a role in making sure that that is as low cost as possible with regard to investment and development in infrastructure. I believe, because I personally cannot do that, and my community cannot do that. So I would agree with pooling our resources, paying taxes in order to get low-cost electricity. That is something that I think is okay for government to do. It is benefiting everyone equally. Okay.
All right. Here we go. We got to get back into it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do it. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
We're continuing now. Ben Carpenter, former representative, now the host of Oversight Live, which you can subscribe to on YouTube every night at 7 p.m. He busts down the actions of the day, what's going on in the committees, what's happening, gives you some behind the scenes, baseball on everything that's going on. Cindy just dropped a comment in the chat room, which I'm going to use to bounce off of for our next segment, Ben. She said, folks in Juneau need to be reminded who they work for. They have lost focus. Now, I would expand on that, because I think they weren't really paying attention to who they work for to begin with. They're working for themselves. They're working towards re-election. But you and I have been talking during the break here about the problem is also not just the folks in Juneau need to be reminded. The average Alaskan needs to be reminded that they need to be paying attention to what's going on with their government. And because of the way that we've set up the government and the elimination of the income tax and the fact that we were funding the entire government from oil revenues and then from permanent fund earnings and everything else, basically just gives everybody in the state a free pass. They just get a free pass to not pay attention because, let the government do it because it's free, right? It's free. We don't see it. It's not free. The money that's being spent on government should come to us first, and then they could tax us on it, and then we'd have some control. But of course, it's not. But to them, it's free. We should just be doing it. Just don't pay attention. The citizenry has got to get involved at this point.
The state employee quality of life, let's put it that way. Their pay, their benefits, their ability to raise their family, live where they want to live. Those things are not in question. Like, they're held harmless in this conversation. People that send representatives down to Juneau want something similar, but they work and live in the private economy. And there isn't as much stability in the private economy as there is in the government economy. So it's natural for people to look at the government and say, well, why don't you give me some of that stability? Why don't we have some tax dollars being spent on me? I understand. I understand that, right? But this is why the adult in the room has to say, look, if you want more government service, then it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost. It needs to come at a cost from you. You need to be willing to pay for it. And it comes at a cost at efficiency, because when you ask government to do anything, it becomes less efficient. It is more costly. So is this really what you want to do? When we don't pay for things ourselves, and when we can just point to debt or to permanent fund earnings, you take that piece of it out of the equation, and then you can grow government to do whatever you want it to do, because you don't have a stake in actually having to pay for it. So to turn this thing around, to turn the ship around here, we the electorate have to start asking some very serious questions of ourselves. What is it that we actually want? Do you want government provided healthcare, or do you want good roads? Do you want government provided schools, or do you want a dividend, large dividend and no quality schools? Okay. How is it? What is the prioritization going on at the local level, at your local school board and your local school district, when that money, some of it's coming from you, but a large percent of it's coming from the state, which is other people's money. So the decisions, the prioritizations that happen at the local level are influenced by that free money that's coming from the state. So what is it that we actually want priority wise in our state? I think people want low cost energy. They want good roads so they can get to a good paying job. That isn't just a state good paying job. That's a private sector good paying job. They want their kids to have higher, more opportunity in the future than they did. If you're expecting government to give that to you and you aren't going to pay for it, that's a long-term fiscal problem. And Natasha von Imhoff and I think would agree that focusing on the long-term economic growth, what's best for the state of Alaska, the adult in the room needs to focus on the long-term economic growth of the state of Alaska and what is best. We need good schools. We don't have them now, and it's a priorities problem. We're spending more than any other state per capita, per pupil on education, and we can't seem to get it right. The government can't get it right. It is not a money problem. It's a priorities problem. Why is it a priorities problem? Because we're spending other people's money.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to, again, a priorities problem at every level. If we're spending more per capita than any other state and we're still in the bottom of the results, if we're spending more per capita than any other state and our schools are falling down around us because the districts and the people who are in charge of managing that money are prioritizing it differently and spending money that should have been used to maintain the buildings on something else, that's a priority problem. I mean, and people need to get involved. The electorate needs to get involved and stop treating this in such a hands-off manner.
There's a part of me that wants to just throw my hands up and walk away. Be perfectly blunt and honest. It is frustrating to see even people that are of my political persuasion not wanting to do the hard thing. Like, you have got to instill discipline in the legislature. You got to have some sort of spending limit. They call the POMV a spending limit. No, that's a revenue limit. It's not a spending limit, because you're going to just disappear the PFD.
Right.
It's not causing you to not spend less.
I love that when she called it, oh, that's our spending limit. The POMV was a spending cap. No, it wasn't.
You got to have something like the Tabor in Colorado, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, right? It's something that says the legislature constitutionally can't spend any more than X, and figure out what X is. I say tie X to the private economy, so that as the private economy grows, as your GDP grows,
you can spend more.
Revenue comes from it. You have more to spend.
Right.
But that's discipline. We don't want that.
This whole thing is just frustrating to watch, especially when we know that. And again, I keep coming back to it. You know, I bring somebody into a conversation, or I'm talking to just some normie person who's, again, disconnected. You know, they're an election day voter. That's all they do. That, you know, or I guess there's probably a better way to put it, but people who only pay attention basically on election day. And then you start getting into these conversations and their eyes get wider and wider and wider because they're never thinking about it. We have no way. We have to find a way to engage those people more in the process of what's going on. Now, some have argued, like Brad Keithley, that if we did have a taxation scheme of some sort, that they would have more skin in the game. Now, others argue, of course, California is an example. Although in California, people are leaving because they have skin in the game and they've decided to pull up stakes and leave. So there is some impact on those things. I don't know what the solution is, Ben. How do we get more of the mom and pops, the average Joes, the normies who aren't paying attention? How do we get them engaged on this in your mind? What's the trigger to get them to start paying attention to what's going on?
Maybe we need to consider taking a step back and looking at our forebearers, not too many generations ago, maybe when hats like this were popular, and say, personal responsibility matters. The consequences of your decisions matter, right? And if you're going to make choices where you're going to suffer pain through your choices, like, for example, mental health care. There is a lot of push for, we got to spend more on mental health care because there's a lot of people out there who've got bad mental health. And I'm thinking to myself, well, probably 90% of the problems with mental health are alcohol or drugs related, right? So we're literally facing decisions or spending decisions and legislator decisions, policy priorities based on other people's bad decisions in life and the consequences for that. And somehow we have to alleviate you of your bad decisions. It used to be a time where, like, you know what? If you're going to go live under a bridge, then you're going to go live under a bridge. Like, you made those decisions. I'm not advocating for lack of compassion, but let's not create systems that create dependency, right? Giesel says, people don't want the PFD as bad as they want Medicaid and SNAP, food stamps, housing subsidies. They want that more than they want PFD. I'm like, really?
That's what they're asking for?
That's what they're asking for?
Yeah.
That's what's good for a healthy state, is to create people dependent on those programs.
Right.
Or like, she thinks she's a Republican, but where's the difference from the Republican Party?
Or Natasha,
or something different.
Natasha's accumulation of all the surveys of all the people in Alaska. And what are they looking for? They're looking for outdoor activities. They're looking for more entertainment. They're looking for more housing. None of them asked for a PFD check. Well, wow. Was that even one of the questions, right? I mean, was that even one of the questions on the whole thing?
Yeah, I get so tired of this argument because there's also people that put their time and money and hear me. Listen, I'm being the adult in the room, right? You're not going to like what I have to say next, but there are people who are spending their money on pleasure in this state, and I go right ahead. Do you, okay? But don't abdicate your responsibility to your greater community and go do you. Like, you still have to take care of the community you live in and want better for the community for your kids, right? If you're coming up here to retire because we're a tax haven, well, you still got to care about maintaining a good state. You can't just check out and go live somewhere else half the year and not participate in the decision-making process and the prioritization of things in the state, right? And I'm pointing the finger back at people who are like, yeah, but this is what I want. This is what pursuit of happiness is to me. Okay, I get that, but we got to have some personal responsibility with maintaining the system that we have, and that's not happening from the people who who used to wear hats like this, that are thinking in personal responsibility and priorities that prioritize personal responsibility. Those people are not participating. They're off enjoying the fruits of their labor. Okay.
Well, yeah. And you made a mention, you said, I feel like I want to throw my hands up in the air, right? I feel that way too. A lot of us do, I think. And part of the problem is that I think there are a lot of folks out there who did just that. They were engaged, but they saw kind of the fruitlessness of doing that with this legislature. Again, I go back to the 4 hours of testimony about the PFD with hundreds of people saying that they wanted it, and Josephson coming up later and saying, well, you guys just don't understand. Again, So now they've thrown their hands up in the air and they've walked away. How do we gather those people back? We got about a minute here.
Yeah. Well, you got to realize that if you don't participate, if you and your friends and your like-minded people, you get a Giesel government. You get a government that is a mother that takes care of everybody. And that's what Kathy Giesel will give you. She and the people who are thinking like her will day in and day out work towards government solutions with other people's money. And you're going to wake up one day, or you're going to hand a state to your kids that you don't recognize. I mean, the same thing has happened at the federal government. And we're like, I don't recognize this. If the founding fathers came forward and they looked at our federal government, they'd be like, what the heck did we create?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it used to look like, because we have demanded it to do things that we're not willing to pay for.
Ben Carpenter is our guest. We're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. One final segment dead ahead. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Don't forget, you can join Ben. Subscribe to his channel on YouTube. It's at youtube.com/@OversightLive, the @ symbol. youtube.com/@OversightLive. We'll continue with more here and Ben Carpenter in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Kim says, Medicaid expansion by Walker was the start of our downfall. I mean, I would argue that the start of the downfall was really, well, the start of the current plight was really under Parnell in the early teens, when they just continued to spend when they knew that oil was low. I mean, he built a budget based on $105 barrel oil, and they knew that oil was at $78 or something at that point. That was the beginning of it. And then it continued when the legislature allowed that to happen by drawing all that money from the CBR and the SBR and draining those accounts out. That's really where it started. Medicaid expansion exacerbated it. And of course, the cutting of the PFD was that's the final note on the way to this downhill slope, Ben.
Yeah, I think that very early on, we should have had, like, we built a hydroelectric dam down here on the Kenai Peninsula that benefits most of the state, rail belt occasionally. We need more of that. And at some point in time, we said we want more of operating budget. We want more social services than we do that. And I'm not sure what year that was, but that thinking where we said, alleviate the challenges of Alaskan life with more government services, more operating budget. That was the turning point here. And I agree with you. I think that Medicaid expansion was just a natural outgrowth of that. Like it is the next step. It is just, of course government should take care of us. Like, I don't understand why we don't just look at the government, the state workers' health plan, our state health plan, and say, look, it would probably be far more advantageous for Alaskans to pay into a system like our healthcare plan that the state offers, and just stop taking federal money. In the long run,
you're 100,000 people on the state health plan and just make them pay. And yeah,
right. I mean, this nonsense that says people don't need to have a financial stake, even if it's a small one, in taking care of themselves, is what creates this thinking, this dependency on government. Everybody needs to have some skin in the game. Otherwise, you start not caring about what you're asking for. Medicaid is an example. You don't pay for it. So why do you care whether the doctor is gouging you or not? Why do you care? You don't. The whole medical, I mean, oh man, you think it's bad now? Wait 5 years. We've got $1 billion, billion plus dollars flowing into the state over the next 5 years into the medical community. It will create jobs and create new things,
programs, right?
New programs,
new constituencies.
5 years, that federal dollars is going to dry up, and we will not have an economy that can support those new things. And
no, we'll be on the hook for that. That's what I was trying to say when she was talking about that. It's $270 million a year for the next 5 years. And what happens on year 6? Guess what? Oh, well, we can't leave these. We've created a constituency. People depend on this. There's jobs, there's programs, there's people will get hurt if we don't. So we're going to have to come up with another $270 million a year in perpetuity on top of all this.
And this is the best thinking of Republicans. I'm not saying state Republicans. I'm talking federal Republicans.
Right. No,
this is their best thinking. Hey, we're going to cut Medicaid, and then we'll just shift the money. Instead of it calling it Medicaid money, we'll call it rural healthcare money. Okay, it doesn't matter. You are continuing this dependency.
Yeah. I want to give you a kind of your final thoughts of where you think the session is going, but I also want to check in with you on your show. How are things going over at Oversight Live?
Yeah, so I've had to make a move. I've been off the air for a number of days now. I've been waiting for some tech support from Riverside.fm, and I'm not happy at all. I think that what they sold is not something that they could actually follow through with. So I have transitioned to StreamYard, and I should be back up and running tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, well, good. Well, let me know. I'm coming up to your neck of the woods today. If you want me to come over and poke at something, let me know. I can help you put that together.
Hey, we'll have you over for lunch or something.
Yeah, because StreamYard's the way to go. It's the one that I've been using for a long time, and it's pretty plug and play, so it's a good deal. But you've been getting some good reactions. I've dropped in on a few of your sessions, and you're getting some good reactions in there. And I think it's good for people to see what they can, what they can expect, and to get some understanding on that. By the way, if you haven't signed up yet, I just dropped the QR code up there in the top left of the screen. You can get signed up by screenshotting that with your phone, or not screenshotting, but pointing your camera at it, and you can get signed up on Oversight Live right now. Let's get back to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay, Ben Carpenter is our guest. One final segment here. And not that I've had him on a leash or anything, but I think I'll just let the reins go a little bit here. Ben, what do you think as you listen to this, as you watch what's happening? You're definitely plugged in on this. You have a lot of the institutional knowledge. You've been part of this, and it's good for people to be able to kind of get some of that perspective. And that's why I think your show is such a great idea over there on YouTube at Oversight Live. But my question is, you're seeing all the things that are happening now. We already know, again, Von Imhoff, Giesel were talking about it. Other legislators, Chuck Kopp is now saying he's confident that they're going to get this defined benefits thing to the governor's desk. Tobin and company just put out another thing saying, well, that just wasn't enough last year. We need more. So here we are facing a deficit, an immediate deficit, which they've fixed now by eliminating the PFD. Now they're showing a small surplus by eliminating the PFD completely. But now you've got all these other demands on that same monies, including defined benefits and schools and everything else, and backfilling Medicaid and the food stamps and everything. What's your prediction for this session? What do you think is going to happen based on all the players, what you're seeing, what they're saying? What do you think is going to be the outcome of this session? Can you give it to me in a crystal ball form here?
Yeah, I would guess that we have less than $1,000 PFD, because everything has to be focused through this lens of reelection in November. So going back to your constituents in the urban areas, which is largely who is running the show in Juneau right now, this Giesel government is focused on government services. So you're likely to see less than $1,000 dividend. She's telegraphing this in her comments. And everything every bill that comes forward, we've got to look at it through a lens. You're talking about this firearms bill, the trigger bill, or whatever it's called. You're probably going to talk more about it tomorrow. But it's for show. It is 100% for the election and for re-election efforts of certain people, right? So
Right.
all of what's happening with the financing and all of that, it's, I think, largely going to be status quo. You've already seen that the Senate doesn't want to do anything with Dunleavy's fiscal plan, so it's going to be status quo. But I think they're gonna dial it up just a little bit, and you're going to see a little less than $1,000 dividend, somewhat less than $1,000 dividend. And the argument will be, look, we've got all of these things. We've got capital budgets that need to increase. We've got operating budgets that need to increase. We've got all of these things that we need. And the only thing that we can do right now is reduce the dividend. No one is going to have courage to say, we need to limit spending. We need to put a spending growth limit on. We need a broad-based tax. We need something other than what is the status quo. We're not going to do that in an election year. So we're going to have the status quo. We're going to have a little bit more spending that we can go back to our constituents and say, hey, look at us. We're doing the right thing. We're giving you what you need. And it'll come from the dividend. It's the only thing, it's the only path that the legislature has right now, politically and financially, fiscally. It's the only thing that they have. You're going to take more of the dividend and you're going to answer constituents' demands with it. That's what's going to happen. And eventually you're going to run out of permit fund earnings, and then they'll come to you for a tax.
I found the most interesting comment that I saw out of all this, of course, the headline, Governor Dunleavy's plan dead on arrival kind of thing was the headline. But I saw several legislators were quoted in a variety of news outlets about the governor's plan. We just don't have the time to deal with this. We just don't have the time to break this down. Now, you've been part of this. We saw what happened during COVID. I mean, you guys were in and out of there in 73 days or something. I mean, it was crazy town. But all of a sudden now, even though we're in a crisis, even though we have a deficit, even though we've got a revenue problem, even though we've got all these other things, somehow we don't have time in 120 days or 103 days or whenever it was that the governor dropped his plan. We don't have time to go through this and figure this out. That it's got to be one of the most disingenuous things I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's not a time problem. It's a priorities problem. It's a will problem. If you wanted to fix the problem, and I'm arguing that it's an election year, so you're not ever going to do anything that's risky during an election year. But if you were, it would be way too easy to just say, look, we're making a policy call that we're going to pass a status quo budget. We're not adding to the budget. We're not decreasing the budget. We're going to spend our time focusing on how to right the ship and find solutions to the current political problems. Namely, what do we do with the dividend? What do we do with spending levels? Like having the adult conversation about the structural deficit that we have. Okay, we're just going to pass a status quo budget, and we're not going to spend our time arguing about that right now. We're going to fix the problem. That would be an easy way to telegraph to the people that says, hey, look, just hold, government hold, people hold. We've got a larger problem, which is the structural problem that we have in the state. And we're going to focus on that for 90 days. You could do that. Yeah. But that's not what's being done. What's being done is the same thing that gets done this is what Josephson made the argument in that House Finance with regard to the way that they removed the PFD from the CS. Well, this is how they've done it in the past, right? We're just following precedent. This is how we've always done it.
except it's always been done in it later on, and it's always been done as a subcommittee thing. And I mean, yeah, except for, and how much of this you just mentioned, you know, the gun bill, the Glock switch bill, which again is just more political theater. It's virtue signaling. How much of the bills and things that are being talked about now are virtue signaling for the election year? I mean, the school funding thing, the defined benefits thing. I mean, they know that these things are probably not going to go through. Is it more about the political theater of it than anything else?
The Senate, I guess the Senate, but the legislature passed the education funding task force. I kid, the funding word wasn't in there, but that's what it is. The education task force was passed last session, right? And it kicks any kind of recommendation for what should happen to January of next year. Okay. So that right there tells me they're not going to do anything with regard to education until that report comes in.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything that's happening with education right now is pandering. It is,
right.
It is telegraphing for elections. I think we should be doing more. That's all it is. It isn't going to amount to a hill of beans with this current session.
Like you said, next year is going to be the dangerous year because this year's an election year. They're not going to kill the PFD completely. They'll give us some pittance, couple $300 maybe, but next year it'll be done. And that's exactly what we've been saying, is that next year, without the election year, people will have 2 years to forget about whatever they do next year, and they'll be confident in making whatever changes they want. And that's when we're really going to get hurt here. Down to the last 90 seconds here, Ben. Final thoughts for today.
Ask the question of your legislature: how much waste is going on in government? Is it 1%? Is it 2%? Other states have done this study and figured it out over time. If it's 1%, if it's 2%, that's hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay. Don't tell me that you can't focus on reducing the cost of government through better management of government, because every government can be better managed at any point in time in history.
It's frustrating. And like you said, Ben, sometimes you just want to throw your hands up in the air and walk away. And, but we can't grow weary in well-doing. We just can't grow weary in well-doing. We've got to keep the pressure on. Yeah. Next year is going to be the true fight and the true race, and we'll see where it goes from there. All right, Ben Carpenter, Oversight Live. You can find him at youtube.com/@OversightLive. Hopefully we can get him back on the air tonight, and we can have more coming up. Ben, thank you so much for coming on board.
My pleasure, Michael. Always good to be with you.
We appreciate it. Folks, tomorrow's Firearms Friday, our favorite day of the week. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. Don't forget, tonight, the Borough Assembly in Fairbanks is doing the Puppy Palace thing, too. Go out there and have your voice be heard. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, Ben. One final. Let me throw this up here real quick, just for folks who want to testify today. The time is 3:30, not 1:30 to 3, but the time is 3:30 today. SB 203 is up for testimony. You could send testimony, senate.state.affairs@akleg.gov, senate.state.affairs@akleg.gov, or you can call 844-586-9085 if you want to do that. So don't forget to do that. And again, tonight at the Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly. All right, Ben, final thoughts for you. You get the final chunk of the apple, so to speak.
There's a whole lot of low-hanging fruit in the legislature right now.
Yeah.
That's what they can do. They can do low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
You got these larger problems that reside at the top of the tree, and we never get to it because we're focused on the low-hanging fruit.
Right. Like, we're going to spend all this time in this committee time on this bill, which just is a duplication of effort, which, I mean, it already has the verbiage in the bill. They're just adding like one little sentence, and they're going to have a whole committee meeting on it and everything else to add another sentence that says exactly the same thing. It makes no sense. Makes no sense at all about any of this. And I think this is one of the reasons why people get so frustrated. This kabuki theater, from the legislature, and they feel like they're just wasting their time. They feel like they've got to go out there and defend it. But at the same time, why are we doing this? Why are we wasting our time?
It's a systems problem. It is a systems problem. You have got to approach this this concept of state government and state funding, even down to the local level. It's a systems problem. We have got to come to terms with that. We need people who can think, deep thinkers, who can think in systems, inputs and outputs, consequences, incentives. You've got to address that if you want to see anything change in the state of Alaska.
Yeah. Unless you want a huge outflow and a huge out-migration of people who have just had enough, because I think there's a lot of people that feel just like Ben, they've just had enough. And then once the PFD is completely gone and then they institute a tax on top of it, then, I mean,
go to the Democrat Party website and look at their resolutions. In 2022, they asked Biden to help them end the oil industry in Alaska. I'm not making this up. Go look for yourself.
Right. No, the 20, what is that? 25% of our full revenue stream comes from the oil industry, not to mention all the jobs and everything else and the impact on the economy, the private economy outside of that. Yeah.
No, that's the thing that they showed at the Commonwealth North, is that the oil revenue projection for this year it's like 17%, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
It's not even 25% anymore. Your permanent fund is providing 43%, I think, of the revenue for the state.
And we're not being taxed, Ben. Just remember.
And we're not being taxed.
And we're not being taxed.
Your government is going to grow at the size and speed of your permanent fund. And eventually, the people who want to see an oil industry end will not need oil money revenue for state government. They won't need it.
Yeah. Well, that's why they want the fund at $100 billion, because then they know they can, although they would just consume all that money anyway and still be looking for more. I mean, I don't know why they think that that's a magic bullet number, but it is what it is. All right, Ben, thank you so much for coming on board. I'll call you later when I'm on my way up the road there, and we'll see if we can help you out there. Appreciate you coming on board today.
See you, Michael.
Folks, we're out of time. We got to go. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget to check us out on Patreon. If you want to become a member of the Common Sense Corps, that's where you do it right there. Or you can just click this QR code. I got this QR code thing. You can click the QR code, become a member of the Corps there as well. We'll see you tomorrow, folks. Be kind, love one another, live well.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Dukes Show.